Hi all.
Hello,
No,
everyone.
Nodrik here with her first podcast. Let's see how it goes. And let me introduce to you all my dear friend Cordelh.
Hello.
Hi, high five.
High five. Boom.
So, so Cordelh is a poet, author, um, screenplay writer as well, a YouTuber, a podcaster, and a lot more. And today I would like to ask him for some personal details of his life. Yeah. So, Cordell,
Yeah.
is there anything you would like to say?
Well, that I'm very happy to be here and to answer to all of your questions. You know, I
Thanks.
mean,
So cringe.
yeah.
Okay. No, I'm okay. So, uh, what would you describe your origin is?
Well, I grew up in Western Europe, in Belgium, to be more precise, in the capital of Belgium. So, like, very much in a urban environment. Now, if well, you know, obviously, and everything administrative, I'm Belgian, but my parents come from other places. Um, so my dad's from New York, my mom's from Argentina. Their parents were from other places too, because basically Argentina and New York are um, migrant places, like migrant centers, and everybody that gets there is from other places themselves. So if we go on the third generation, like my grandparents, I have an English name which comes down directly from one of my grandfather, then who was English, obviously, and my grandmother was from Spanish background, and then my other grandfather was from Italian background, and my other grandmother was from German background. But to be
Oh,
totally honest, even then, I suspect that the blood mixes even more because we've been migrants, travelers for a long time, basically.
so basically, you're from Europe, like your origins basically European.
Yeah, my father used to make this silly joke when I would talk to him and say that my classmates would make racist jokes on me, and he would tell me, well, just tell them that you are more European than them because they are from only one country and you're from four different countries of Europe. That said,
Hmm.
because of the multiple origins that I have, I can't imagine myself siding on a side for national values. Perhaps ideals, because I mean there are some humanistic ideals that I bear just like everybody else. But on the national perspective, I'm like, all of this is just, you know, different cultural background rather than opposing forces, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
but you told me your grandparents were very famous dancers.
Yeah, my grandfather and my grandmother. So my grandfather, way back when in the 1920s, probably like 28, 29, traveled to Argentina. He must have been like 3 or 4 years old. And my grandmother she, I don't know if she was born in Argentina or if she traveled with her father, but basically her father owned a lot of land over there. And I don't know how it happened, but the little princess that was my grandmother started loving dancing, and then she got professional and got into it. And then my grandfather, as he grew up, he started dancing professionally too. He really had it in the blood. Then they met, they fell in love, and they became a pair of dancers for a long time. And during their travel, they had my dad. Wait, who's the oldest? Yeah, first it was my dad. No, I don't know who's the oldest. If it is my dad or his sister. But basically, they had three kids who are all born in different places of the world themselves, because
Oh my God.
my grandparents were travelers.
So you have your siblings are also spread
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah,
all over the world.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, two of us are here, but we're from different side of the linguistic frontier of Belgium, and then my big brother is in Argentina. Yeah, but I haven't seen them in a long time, a long, long time.
Your big brother is awesome. I like him a lot. From all the videos I have seen.
They're all
Like,
good. All my family is good. They're all good.
yeah. No, awesome. You are a poet. Do you remember your first poem?
Yes, yeah, I do. Although it's complicated, because
Hmm.
I was groomed in what I do. It's just that I remember the first poem that I felt was a well constructed of my own poem. Everything before that felt more like guided writing, like
Oh,
being under the wing of my parents, my teachers, and stuff like that. And of course, I would have a creative mind in which I would, you know, write short stories or stuff like kids do. But looking back at that period, it was more like, yeah, following a sort of education. And then I remember this poem that I wrote, and suddenly thinking to myself, okay, this is exactly how I want to write. Yeah.
mm.
And
uh,
you know this poem. Actually, I've read it a few times. It's a French poem, actually.
I oh, one of your earliest poems was when you were 15.
I was between 13, 14, something like that. 14,
Oh,
no, perhaps even 15, something around those ages, between 13
is
and 15.
is
Probably
that
more the
the
sort of 15.
is that the poem Ode to the Moon?
Exactly. Yes.
Oh, could you read it in French later
Yes.
on,
Yeah, of course.
just as a treat?
It has changed though. Like when I wrote
Mhm.
it the first time,
Yeah.
I remember following a different type of rhyme. Like I changed the poem with the years, and I used to have an original copy, but now I only have this copy, which is kind of funny because
Oh,
when I read it, I remember the old one through this one. And the first poem I wrote, well, the first version I wrote was in 6 syllables. So it was ta 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 ta, one line,
yeah.
ta 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 ta, second line. And the second version I wrote, I actually put um, the two lines together and made it a 10 syllables word, and kept the rhymes in the middle, so you can hear the remnant of the old poem within the new poem. It's just that I got rid of a few words and extended the length of the sentences.
So basically, your first original poem grew up with you and changed itself as you matured your style,
I
I
guess so.
think.
I guess so.
Yeah. I would totally be honored to hear it in French.
If you give me an instant, I think I can find it for you.
Sure.
Would you like me to read first an English translation? Do you have an English translation?
No, you can read it in French just to
Okay.
give us the feel of your first poem.
À la lune. Sereine, Sélène, mécène de nos poèmes et reine de nos joies, douloureuses et amoureuses de nos peines. Tu nous consoles pour nous donner la parole et nous inspires pour que nous autres poètes nous puissions t'écrire. Si tu avais été femme, j'aurais été ton esclave. Si tu avais été la mer, j'aurais été une épave. Mais à la place, tu es prisonnière du firmament et te dois d'écouter chacun de nos douloureux tourments. Insuffle-moi tes pensées par le souffle de ta voix, et rends-moi de ta cour d'étoiles le souverain et roi, pour que par des poèmes je puisse moi aussi partager cette sérénité qui me fait me sentir si âgé.
I love it.
Thank you.
Not to the moon. I mean, I heard it. We do streams together. I heard it several times, and each time it's just one of my favorite poems. Of course.
Particularly proud of this one. You know, I remember this movie that inspired me a lot. I imagine it inspired a lot of writers. The Dead Poet Society. Yeah, I remember
Oh,
watching it,
I know
and
this movie.
of course everybody does. But you know, when I watched that movie, and there was this scene when the kids go out in the cave at night, they sneak out, and they have the rush of not getting caught, and then they get in the cave, they got alcohol, a little bit of food, a few cigarettes, which are like all three totally freaking illegal in the classical school where they study Latin. I could relate to it because I was approximately, well, actually, I was doing Latin studies in those days, and
Yeah.
I was in a, very, very uptight school, not with a uniform, but like everything was pretty uptight, and yeah, I remember that there was something missing, in my life back in those days, and the thing that was missing was really poetry, and
Oh,
yeah, it was.
I thought cigarettes, drinking, and friends in the cave. Well,
No, I could do that
this
on
you
my
had.
own. Yeah, it's not that I have. It's just I could have it easily. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I didn't start smoking until later on, and in those days I actually really really didn't like tobacco at all.
Uh, when I was 16, from 16 till 17, I was in a boarding school in Ukraine. Actually, so we lived away from parents, me and my sister. So, and we had a uniform. It was really classy boarding school. And because I was myself, I was skipping classes, and I made friends with the local kids who did not go to the school, but they were like, street kids. And remember uh, running through the broken bridge above Dnipro River, like a huge bridge, so broken, like parts of it were falling down to the river, and I would run like so totally free through the broken bridge, and people were like going carefully behind me, and they were like, "You crazy!" And I was running, and I was shouting a poem.
No, that's fun.
I was shouting a lyric from a song, like about freedom
Hmm.
in Russian, and I was like screaming it to everybody. And so for me, poetry was always associated with liberty, like with freedom and freedom of expression, just freedom. And the Dead Poet Society film, when they escaped with the cigarettes and the alcohol into the cave, and they were like this unity, this camaraderie, everything. And then they would recite poetry.
Yeah.
It's something that I lived through in a different form, but still very similar, and also accidentally in a boarding school as well.
Hmm. Like,
Yeah,
poetry is in many ways exactly as you describe it. I think the big problem is in our society
yeah,
is that the approach to study poetry is scholar, and the scholar approach to poetry is basically we're gonna force into you whatever we find good,
yeah,
Shakespeare or some really classical, everybody knows the name of type of
yeah.
poetry, and and the kid gets annoyed by it, which is normal because yeah,
It would be both boring and not relatable somehow.
well, it could be relatable. I mean, among them all, Shakespeare is indeed relatable to almost everybody. But at the same time, poetry is very much about discovery. And if we restrain that discovery, then it doesn't become an introduction to poetry, it becomes an instruction on you learn that because we decided you have to think like that. And there it becomes a little strange, you know. Like, I suspect, for example, that many of the issues that we have in modern society about romance between man and woman do descend from the education we have, for example, with Shakespeare and Romeo and Juliet and things like that. Because in our head, unconsciously,
Yeah.
the perfect love is Romeo and Juliet. We've been drilled that information into our head.
Oh my God, this is a horrible love what they have.
It is a horrible love, but it is
It's
the
an
one that all the teenagers dream of.
obsessive. I mean, every teenager has this
Mm.
at one point. I can believe so. Without the drama of the family war, but everything first actually is multiplied by 10, all the feelings. And Shakespeare wrote about this first unmatured love. Like it was obsession more than love, and ended really badly. And
Well,
I don't see love of Romeo and Juliet as a perfect love actually.
I would argue that one of the I don't know, it's a big statement though, but one of the issues I feel is that in a general way, humanity has this tendency of teaching our kids that love has to be this ideal romantic stuff, love on first sight, and boom, and it changes life. When the reality of things is that love is something much more complex and very much more unique in the sense per individual. Every individual will love in their own way, will be loved in their own way. So trying to define that, putting it in a box, inevitably leads to mimicking. So for example, well, this is some memory that I have in the past. I remember watching a TV show with one of my ex-partner. It was one of those chick flicks, you know, not nothing too extravagant, but some romantic stuff. And then the stuff finishes, we go eat, and during the meal we have a fight. And I remember the words of the TV show coming out of the mouth of my ex. And suddenly it came to my mind, Jesus Christ, how much are we affected by what we watch on TV, like what we absorb as background information. Like we're tired, we're just spacing out, we watch something, and then the message of that TV show is about this drama, love, in which the perfect love is a man and a woman fighting like that, like all the time, and then suddenly we come out of it and it reproduces itself in reality. And to me, it was really shocking. And that's why I would argue that, in a certain sense, the experience of reading books, literature, and stuff like that, of many different cultures, is really important to understand not what love means, but what love means to oneself. Like, what does love mean to me? What does, like, if you asked yourself that question, what does love mean to me? It probably would be a different answer than the answer many other people would give, Love means different things to different people. So the more we discover personifications of love, diversity of love, the more we can really understand ourselves and how we deal with such emotions, basically.
Do you feel the way you perceive love evolved, or it pretty
Yeah.
much
Oh, yeah.
stayed the same?
No, of course it did. Of course. Like, when I was a kid, a young kid, I mean, okay, let's say when I was the
You mean
youngest.
17?
No, no. Let's say when I was a real kid, like
Mhm.
under 12. I do remember having little girlfriends. I got to 12, 13, I started to be interested to women, and there I got to this age where it was more obsessional, like I see a woman. At first, I remember the first year it was like, no, I'm not gonna play with you because you're a girl. That was what was going on in my head. And the thing is, I didn't like
Yeah.
already playing with the boys, so basically I ended up reading books by myself in some corner of the courtyard. But then, as I grew up, it became some sort of obsession, in which I would, for example, write a poem to a girl, and the poem would reflect my emotions of her rather than be something that I wrote for her. And nowadays, what I notice is when I write a poem for someone, I try to, to, to put myself in their head and think, what would they want to hear? What is the message that they're looking for? The what would please their ears, basically. That is when I write a poem for someone specific. And that's a big difference because it took me a lot of time to actually get to the point in which I could, instead of writing my own feelings and give them to someone, write something that I knew that someone would find beautiful. Writing writing something that I knew that someone would find beautiful. Because that requires actually knowing the topic and the person who you write it for. It's it's a much more intimate approach, I would argue. And it's very reflective also of how I love, in many ways. Like, for example, also, for the longest time, I had this perception of the ideal love, you know. I would get
Yeah.
married, I would get kids, by 36 I would have them, so in an astrological kind of level, they would be the same year as me, and I wouldn't have to deal with complicated stuff. There would be a little same astrological sign as me, and
Little Cordelh.
yeah, little Cordelh, yeah, as close as we can come to cloning, I imagine, in a natural
Yes.
way.
Awesome.
But then the reality hits, and one has to understand that it's not because we have an ideal of love in our head that it's all that matters. That love is not just what I feel towards one other person. What the it's also everybody around. It's also two person. It's also it's a combination of those two. It's not just one plus one. It's the the results too, and it's also the environment around. I mean, it's not just that. Mm, and in that sense, that made me grow up again, because then I understood that in the end, things are more like different roads, that get together and twine and then keep on going towards the same direction and then separate again and then come back, or perhaps never come back and just separate and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like the important thing, and that's where I think I join a lot of people, is that the important thing, at least in my perception of love, is basically to be able to walk beside the person that one is interested in, be it in the best place as much as in the worst places, and always be able to come back with that person. And that's something pretty unique. I I don't know. Perhaps I am idealizing, the conception of love. Perhaps love is much more simple than that. Perhaps love is just going down the street, meeting someone random, and starting something new, like that. But it doesn't make sense, to me. If it is that simple, then it doesn't make sense. Which leads to, I guess, the question if love does have to be something that is complicated. And yeah.
Well, uh, from my point of view, love is not you go down the road, you meet somebody, and if you spend enough time together, you can make it work. It's love. uh, it's subconscious somehow, like all our experiences previously have been grooming us to the next stage of life, and let's say love. Like all the previous relationships, however good or bad they are, they prepared us. They worked uh, into our subconsciousness the signs we should look for. Yes, what we find attractive. Like I do notice I find attractive just a hand gesture sometimes. Like the way person looks down and then looks up. All those things I did not notice as a child. Like I noticed it later on. I just picked it up from like all the experiences I have, and I could sculpture it into that image I am attracted to somehow. And um, usually that's how it works. I think we are groomed uh, to love somehow, and we are groomed by life to be attracted to a specific person or specific group of people. I don't know, whatever somebody likes. uh, and yeah, and
Maybe,
I think that is love. It's within each person it evolves. And for me, Romeo and Juliet, coming back to Shakespeare, it's not love. It's just like this first chemical reaction in their brain. They first time felt it, and plus it's a forbidden fruit that enhanced the drama and love. And of course, everybody, as you once said, like everybody loves drama more than the happiness.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, yeah. So what about that? Why do people actually loved what you said about people wanting a hero they can relate to, that they would feel uncomfortable with, and they also would like to see that hero fail.
Yeah, of
Why?
course. It
Like
it actually comes back.
Odysseus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, there was this travel of Odysseus,
Mhm.
Odyssey in Russian,
Yeah.
like
The Odyssey.
and he traveled and his wife got married in the meantime, like all the drama which was happening to him, and it was like it's considered one of the greatest and most popular stories, all the really horrible things that happened to poor Odysseus.
And you know what's really ironic? Because if I
Yeah.
remember well, the Odyssey is the
Yeah.
story of a Greek that went to Troy,
Yeah.
fought there for many years, and then took the boat and got lost on the way to actually Greece. So basically, you can double the amount of trauma
Yeah,
that
suffering
you
and
suffer.
the
Yeah,
pain and the suffering.
well,
Yeah.
this all comes back to Greek antiquity.
Mhm.
Um, if you look at the origins of oral poetry, like
Yeah.
at least in Greece, um, it is linked to appeasing, basically, the people in a grand scale. Not just the 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 poor, but actually the rich families, the leaders of the families, because
Yeah.
it will show them. Um, it would be a release, a sort of release. And they actually studied that in psychology. It is a real thing. We, as humans, we have a tendency of wanting a hero that will come take us out of our routine, change the statu quo, the injustice we perceive, but then unconsciously we will reject the patronage, having somebody that's patronizing, telling us what to do, how to be, and stuff like that, which leads actually to some sort of Oedipus syndrome, really, in which we
Yeah.
dislike it so much that we want to see them fail. And I think the secret is that we have to be aware as humans that we have these spaces, you know. And the Greeks were smart about it because they played with it. They knew that it existed, and then they started writing plays and stories like that to actually play with the psyche, which is I personally find it amazing. Like uh, instead of that, what do we have? Psychiatrists and psychologists, you know. And it's not like if they were telling us stories, they're listening to our
Yeah.
stories. So, it's interesting to.
I noticed, like, thanks, courtesy of yourself, and thanks to I was hanging out with poets a lot, and I noticed that people write heavy, really dark things, like really dark thoughts. They express negativity onto paper, onto poetry, more often than beauty. I know, like we spoke about this before, that you said like a sample of Percy Shelley, who wrote
Yeah.
the pretty poems, but mostly it's kind of tragedy on a paper. And and the other people actually it's popular, and the angry poems,
Yeah.
like the anger in a poem, like
Oh yeah.
let's
Those are
imagine.
famous. Yeah, anger palm. Yeah,
Oh,
that's a thing
oh my
actually.
God,
That's a thing. Yeah.
yes, those are really famous.
Mm.
um does it is it basic human laziness that they
Yeah.
would like somebody else to express their feelings?
No, I think what happens is okay. So not everybody is aware of what happens in the mind when a person works with poetry, basically, and it's a complicated um, mechanism, basically. For example, if I start writing, the motive will be very meaningful. If I start writing because I want to express my anger for someone or for something or for some idea or something, I will write in a very different way than if I want to write a poem to attract the attention of someone or inspire love in someone, or if I'm trying to explain a message with a sort of morality at the end, like a fable, or every type of writing has this connotation. And the problem is, I would argue that most poets that are really successful don't take themselves seriously because, first of all, because it requires not to take yourself seriously to actually go in front of people and read poetry and be ready to be thrown tomatoes in the face and eggs and be insulted and be asked the most horrible question because you wrote something on paper. And second of all, because after doing these kind of experiences, after reading and expressing and sharing and receiving different type of answer, one can see inevitably that the message one tries to promote in the poem is not perceived the same way as one writes it, you know, which truly in the end means that poems are not meant to be understood the way we write them. They're meant to be understood as we read them. And a lot of people don't perceive that. What they think is, I'm writing something so serious and everybody has to listen to me because my message is the truth. And they don't perceive that there is actually something more. And I would argue that by doing that, sadly, at least to me, it inspires laughter. That type of anger inspires comedy to me. I'm angry, like Kylo Ren, bah, 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 hitting on the wall. Sorry, I'm just saying, that type of anger, you know.
Kylo Ren, come on. Kylo Ren was relatable
Hmm.
to a lot of people. That's
Yeah, of
why
course.
he was loved.
Yeah, but I would argue that really, in the end, after a while, yeah, a writer will always systematically think about the message that they want to promote in the poem, but they will also not really care about what other people hear through their poem.
Yeah.
They will be happy when they are told that it touches them, or but that somebody tells them, "Oh, your poem inspired me something." But I'm not sure. Well, I don't write to receive compliments. Like I appreciate them, but it's not. It's, it, like I would much rather find an actor or an actress, give them my poems, and have them
Yeah.
read it and get the applause and the light and all of that. Like I would rather 100% that. And then at some point, perhaps after the reading, them saying, "Hey, by the way, the writer of this thing is over there, and then point me with the finger or something like that, and then have like 2 seconds of light on me, and then disappear in the darkness of the, you know, the stage, not the stage, but the places where spectators sit. That's my place, like making sure that people really appreciate what they see and hear, rather than it being the spotlight.
So I think we can safely say that poems are not meant to be understood exactly as the writer meant it, but as person perceives it or receives it. I think it even regardless who reads it, like if the actor read it or not. Everybody everybody will understand your poem in accordance with their own personal experiences. So okay, guys. Under the video, I will post a link to Cordel's Patreon account. Please support his book of poetry, or many books actually. And check out his YouTube channel. Join the Pinder Poet Society. Ah, by the way, I would like you to tell me the story of Pinder and the Pinder Poet Society before we close the podcast.
So Pindar was one of the first oral poets. He's considered to be one of the fathers of poetry, basically, in the context of Western civilization, in the sense that he came from the Greek antiquity, you know, like poetry basically spread from there throughout Europe, and we're talking 600 years before the Christ, in the times of Macedonia and Alexander the Father, and then Alexander the Great. And Pindar was a citizen of Thebes, Thebes, and he traveled a lot, and he was an excellent poet. A little bit traditionalist. Mostly he wrote about religion and stuff like that, but you have to put yourself in the context, And he wrote actually mostly about the antique Greek gods, which is very old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And during his travels, he became friends with Alexander, the father of Alexander the Great, and he saw that the Macedonian army was actually getting stronger and tougher and getting ready to actually conquer the world, basically. And he went back to Thebes, and if I remember well, wrote a play for it, with some metaphor instead of the Macedonian being the Macedonian. He wrote, some sort of locust through the wrath of God that came and destroyed the city, and people laughed it off. And then the Alexander the Father died, and Alexander the Great took power, and then Alexander the Great went on, conquering the world, and in his conquers he got to Thebes, and he ransacked the city. He totally, put it to ransack, destroyed it. And the legend goes that Pindar house was the only one that was left untouched, because how much respect people had for his poems. Like, he was so famous that nobody touched his house, and that was it. You know.
I love that you chose the name of your poet society. Actually, yeah, we didn't talk about it. You organized a poet society on Discord,
Yep.
and you named it Pinder Poet Society.
Yeah.
And as well, you have your podcast where you read each week a different poet and discuss his life. I love it. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It,
It's an honor for me to participate in those.
it's a lot of fun to do also. I personally find it a lot of fun. I mean, it takes a lot of work, but on and
Hmm.
on, bouncing ideas, reading, and talking about what we read is very instructive and inspiring, to be honest. Like, what's interesting is also the diversity of perspective of different poems. And of course,
Yeah.
sometimes, we will misunderstand a poem. But even through the misunderstanding of a poem, I still feel like we discover something, you know? Like someone
Yeah.
saw something on a poem that nobody else looked at and nobody else thought of. And it's because of the nature of poetry. Because poems are dual, they can mean what they mean and they can mean the exact opposite of what they mean. Which,
Have noticed it in my own poems. Actually, I reread the poems later on, and the meaning has changed
yeah,
by the events that passed.
yeah, of course.
Somehow, it's weird.
Yeah, of course. But it to me, it pushes again this perspective that poetry is not meant to be understood the way we write it. It's meant to be understood the way we read it. And yeah, but it's been a lot of fun doing those projects. I want to keep it going. Like keep doing those poems.
Amazing. So before we close, I would like to do something. I would give you an object, and you will pick it up, a random object from the wall. Like I
Okay.
would give the object to the wall
Oh,
here.
oh, 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 that's not gonna
Let's do
work.
it like
Wait,
that.
wait, wait, wait. Wait. I'm gonna
Like,
do something to make it work.
just some to add some cheeriness.
Okay. Okay,
Uh,
let's give it a shot.
okay. Oh.
You want it again?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
keep it.
Okay, give it to me. Give it to
There you go.
I like. Okay, guys, just check all the links below the video. Subscribe, like.
And will be.
Yeah, yeah. Bye.